Yeah, some days I feel unfazed, like when I'm with my friends with a cup raised. On Monday, I got a gun raised, suicidal to a dime till hump day. Then I go right back at it like an automatic. More drinks, more songs, more beats to rap. I need a shrink, I'm gone, more time keeps passing. No watch, no thoughts at all, just a hat, new era. Rep my P's and those O's, need the Phillies with the orange and black to feel home. From Citizens Bank back to Camden Yards, it's a tale of two cities and trust we go hard. Trust we go hard, yes we go hard. You said we go hard, I said we go hard. Rockin' my Bob Cousy, stocking up on the loose. The lyrics come easy, but the life is a doozy. And yes, I'm choosy, and no, I won't settle, but I still take pop off over that kettle, cause I'm talking bigger picture. And yes, I'm gonna hit you with
the Ford Ranger. Chances are, if you clicked on this video, you'd already know what it's going to be about. But if you don't, well, you're going to find out. For the last few years, the Ford Ranger has been Australia's best-selling car. But for those of us who don't own one, because we've evolved past the Neanderthal era, it's a very love-hate relationship. And by that I mean, there's not much love and a lot of hate. Now, unless you're roommates with Patrick Star and live under a rock, you'd know exactly what I'm talking about. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, over the years, we've had many plagues. Most notably, the Black Plague. But it seems that we're still in the midst of our most recent one that we've had to endure. And that of course is the plague of the PX Ford Ranger. Now, the Ford Ranger nameplate has been around since the 1980s, and in the early 2000s/late 1990s, it finally came to Australia. And for a few years, there was peace. But then, in 2011, Ford made a massive mistake by releasing the PX generation Ford Ranger. Now, let me get this straight. The car itself isn't really the problem. Besides all the mechanical issues and the really weird oil system, where if you don't change the oil within 10 minutes, the whole engine blows up. But the Ford Ranger was a bit of a game changer. Thanks to its unique 5-cylinder turbo diesel engine, which gave it an extra cylinder compared to most of the other utes in its category it was competing against, therefore more power. And what I'd say in 2011 was a pretty good looking design, it's safe to say that the Ford Ranger was a commercial success. Now, during this time, the battle for the biggest flog car on the road was a tight contention between 4 cars: the Ford Ranger, the Toyota Hilux, the Holden Commodore, and the Ford Falcon. But then between 2016 and 2017, something major happened. The Toyota Hilux, which for the last 5 years had consistently outsold the Ford Ranger every year, was replaced by the N80 series, which completely and utterly stumbled out of the gates. And then on the 7th of October 2016, the last ever Ford Falcon rolled off the production line. And then pretty much exactly a year after that, the Holden Commodore faced the same fate. Now, you may be wondering, what has this got to do with Ford Ranger drivers? Well, you see, all of Australia's worst drivers, tradesmen, bogans, people who own jet skis, and just heroes in general, in the space of 1 year, had 3 of the 4 options of a brand new vehicle that they can buy taken away from them. So naturally, there was only one thing for them to do, and that was of course, migrate to the Ford Ranger dealership. Now look, I can already see the comments, and I feel like it's time to remind you guys that this video is entirely a joke. It's not all Ford Ranger drivers, but it's always a Ford Ranger driver. Anyway, with that little history lesson out of the way, it's time to get into the behaviours, characteristics, and the general how-to guide when it comes to being a Ford Ranger driver. So with that said, I think we've had more than enough waffle, let's get into it. Now first up, we'll start off with the most important aspect of being a Ford Ranger driver, and that of course is breaking road rules and driving like a complete maniac. Now the most popular Ford Ranger maniac driving style is of course tailgating. Tailgating is the art of sitting on someone's ass because they're going too slow in front of you, you just simply don't like them, you're trying to intimidate them in a road rage situation, or if you're a Ford Ranger driver, usually just for no reason at all. Now you usually find this in the right lane of the freeway. When you're already doing 10 to 20 k's over the speed limit, a Ford Ranger will just appear out of nowhere and sit right up your ass until you move into the next left lane. Now what you're supposed to do is move over to the left lane and let them go through. But if they start getting aggressive, sitting on your ass, and you can see the Ford Ranger driver getting visibly angry in the rearview mirror, I like to press the brake, cancel my cruise control, and let the car gradually slow down to 90 k's an hour. But this isn't the only solution to a Ford Ranger driver being up your ass, because what you can also do is slam the brakes on, they'll go flying up your ass, and they'll be the one at fault. And if they're so far up the ass of your car that you can see that they've got a dash cam in your rearview mirror, use the handbrake. That way the brake lights won't come on and the dash cam footage is in your favour. But you see, tailgating isn't the only antisocial driving habit that these Ford Ranger drivers display. It seems that a large majority of these Ford Ranger drivers look down at their steering wheel, see that Ford badge, and think that they're either in a Ford GT or a Series 3 AU Falcon Forte. And that means that they drive their top-heavy 2-ton ute like a sports car, swerving in and out of lanes, driving like absolute madmen, and this is usually the outcome. But by far the most dangerous bad habit that these Ford Ranger drivers display has to be running red lights. Like, just look at this one. Ran the red light for absolutely no reason and collected a $300,000+ Porsche 911. But you see, when it comes to running red lights, it's not always the Ford Ranger that's at fault. And unfortunately for this Ford Ranger driver, Jimmy the Junkie and his girlfriend Crystal Beth found that one out the hard way when they stole this car, ran a red light, and smashed straight into his Ford Ranger Wildtrak. The Ford Ranger is the mortal enemy of the red light. Whether they're running them themselves or becoming the victim of someone else running the red light, Ford Rangers and red lights just don't get along. Now that we've got into basically everything you need to know about Ford Rangers and Ford Ranger drivers, now we'll get into where you can find them. And first up, of course, is the mechanic. As I mentioned before, and pretty much just like every other new car on the market these days, the Ford Ranger is full of problems. Whether it's still under warranty and is back at the dealership for its 7th EGR failure or 3rd complete engine swap, from what I've gathered from Ford Rangers, they'll either go forever and have zero issues, or spend more time on the hoist than on the road. But I don't know if this is an actual issue with the car or the drivers themselves, because I mean, you've seen in this video alone just how badly these cars get treated in the first place. Then of course, the next most common place to find these Ford Ranger drivers is in the right lane of the M1, usually during peak hour, tailgating the person in front of them, even though there's nowhere they can go and they can't go any faster. And if it's not a weekday, they'll be doing the same thing on the M1 again, but with their jet ski on the back. Now I just want to quickly talk about this. What is it with Ford Ranger drivers and driving jet skis? Or jet ski drivers owning Ford Rangers? I remember in the summer of 2022, the PY Ranger had just released, and me and some friends went down to the Rye boat ramp, and that place was just a spawn point for the new generation Ford Ranger. But you see, that's given me a great business idea. I'm going to start my own joint Ford and Sea-Doo dealership right on the Rye foreshore, where I specialise in selling clockback Raptors and clockback Sea-Doos for dodgy zero deposit finance deals. And I'm going to call this business venture Farcanel Enterprises. Anyway, while we're on the topic, I got to quickly touch on the Ford Ranger Raptor. Now there's currently 2 generations of Ford Ranger Raptor available in Australia. The PY generation and of course the previous PX generation. The PY generation was nothing special. It had some extra stickers, the rear aux cart leaf springs were swapped out for coils, and it was given a wider body and some cool rims. But at the end of the day, it was just as slow as the rest of them. But the real change came in 2022 when they released the PY generation Ranger Raptor. They swapped out the 2-litre diesel time bomb with a 3-litre twin-turbo V6, gave it even bigger stickers, and a whopping 300 kilowatts or 400 horsepower. Combine that with a rear lockable diff, the new Ranger Raptor is actually a machine. But with a brand new price tag of $100,000 for a dual cab ute, and only a 2.5 ton towing capacity, and the fuel economy of a Lamborghini with a hole in the fuel tank, this car's almost been specifically reserved for the final bosses of Ford Ranger driving. So of course, if you see one of these, watch out. But the drivers aren't even the worst part of the Ford Ranger Raptor, because that of course is the exhaust note. If you've ever had the displeasure of being driven past by one of these Ford Ranger Raptors, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. Now the Lexus LFA is widely regarded as one of the greatest sounding cars of all time, and that's because they got Yamaha, who make musical instruments, to help design the exhaust. Well, it seems that Ford didn't do the same thing. The Ranger Raptor exhaust sounds like they got a bunch of workers, fed them a diet of only baked beans and dare iced coffees for a month, and then based the exhaust note of what they heard around the office. Anyway, the final place that you'll find the most Ford Rangers is of course the auction yards. All Ford Rangers at the auction yards will either exclusively have front end damage or side damage. The front end damage of course is from tailgating too hard and rear-ending the car in front. Then of course the side on damage is from running a red light and getting absolutely T-boned. Anyway, to put a long story short, the Ford Ranger is a device that brings out the worst in humanity. If you want a fast Ford ute, get a Falcon. If you want a reliable dual cab, get a D-Max. And if you enjoyed this video so much that you watched it all the way till the end, you may as well watch one of these and press the subscribe button. See you in the next one.